It is a misty morning, and I was reminded of pale fire while I was doing something else, something technical. And I thought I'd make some audio, but the back and forth nature of this book, we have to go from poetry to a commentary. The back and forth nature of this book combined with the complex nature of the sentences and the fact that I have to speak in the middle of the sentences to give some context even to the reader who has already read Bellfire makes it so that I need to read this in video form. And I should warn the listener that there will be spoilers along the way. So if you have not read the book, please do not listen to the video unless you don't care about spoilers. So yes, we can start with the reading. Notes to lines 433 to 434. To the sea which we had visited in 33. In 1933, Prince Charles was 18 and Diza, Duchess of Spain, 5. The allusion is to Nice. See also line 240, where the Shades spent the first part of that year. But here again, as in regard to so many fascinating facets of my friend's past life, I am not in the possession of particulars. Who is to blame, dear SS? And not in the position to say whether or not, in the course of possible excursions along the coast, they ever reached Cap Turk and glimpsed from an oleander-lined lane, usually open to tourists, the Italianate villa built by Queen Diza's grandfather in 1908 and called then Villa Paradiso, or in Gemblin, Villa Paradisa, later to forgo the first half of its name in honor of his favorite granddaughter. There she spent the first 15 summers of her life. Thither did she return in 1953 for reasons of health, as impressed on the nation, but really a banished queen. And there she still dwells. When the Gemblin Revolution broke out, May 1st, 1958, she wrote the king a wild letter in governess English urging him to come and stay with her until the situation cleared up. The letter was intercepted by the Honourable Police, translated into crude Gemblin by a Hindu member of the extremist party, and then read aloud to the royal captive in a would-be ironic voice by the preposterous commandant of the palace. There happened to be in that letter only one, thank God, sentimental sentence. I want you to know that no matter how much you hurt me, you cannot hurt my love. And the sentence, if we re-English it from the Gemblin, came out as, I desire you and love when you flog me. He interrupted the commandant, calling him a buffoon and a rogue, and insulting everybody around so dreadfully that the extremists had to decide fast whether to shoot him at once or let him have the original of the letter. Eventually, he managed to inform her that he was confined to the palace. Valiant Diza hurriedly left the Riviera and made a romantic but fortunately ineffectual attempt to return to Gembla. Had she been permitted to land, she would have been forthwith incarcerated, which would have reacted on the king's flight, doubling the difficulties of escape. A message from the Carlists containing these simple considerations checked her progress in Stockholm, and she flew back to her perch in a mood of frustration and fury. Mainly, I think, because the message had been conveyed to her by a cousin of hers, good old Curdy Bluff, whom she loathed. Several weeks passed, and she was soon in a state of even worse agitation, owing to rumors that her husband might be condemned to death. She left Cap Turk again. She had travelled to Brussels and chartered a plane to fly north when another message, this time from Odon, came saying that the king and he were out of Gembla and that she should quietly regain Villa Diza and await their further news. In the autumn of the same year, she was informed by Lavender that a man representing her husband would be coming to discuss with her certain business matters concerning property she and her husband jointly owned abroad. She was in the act of writing on the terrace under the jacaranda a disconsolate letter to Lavender when the tall, sheared and bearded visitor with a bouquet of flowers of the gods, who had been watching her from afar, advanced through the garlands of shade. She looked up, and of course no dark spectacles and no makeup could for a moment fool her. Since her final departure from Zembla, he had visited her twice, the last time 2 years before, and during that lapse of time her pale skin, dark hair beauty had acquired a new, mature and melancholy glow. In Zembla, where most females are freckled blondes, we have the saying, Belwif Iverkumpf with Schneu Ibanumpf. A beautiful woman should be like a compass rose of ivory with 4 parts of ebony. And this was the trim scheme nature had followed in Deeza's case. There was something else, something I was to realize only when I read Pale Fire, or rather reread it after the first bitter hot mist of disappointment had cleared before my eyes. I am thinking of lines 261 to 267 in which Shade describes his wife. I think we should go to that line. Your profile has not changed. The glistening teeth biting the careful lip, the shade beneath the eye from the long lashes, the peach down rimming the cheekbone, the dark silky brown of hair brushed up from temple and from nape, the very naked neck, the Persian shape of nose and eyebrow. You have kept it all, and on still nights we hear the waterfall. I am thinking of lines 261 to 267 in which Shade describes his wife. At the moment of his painting that poetical portrait, the sitter was twice the age of Queen Deeza. I do not wish to be vulgar in dealing with these delicate matters, but the fact remains that 60-year-old Shade is lending here a well-conserved curve, the ethereal and eternal aspects he retains, or should retain, in his kind noble heart. Now the curious thing about it is that Deeza at 30, when last seen in September 1958, bore a singular resemblance, not of course to Mrs. Shade as she was when I met her, but to the idealized and stylized picture painted by the poet in those lines of Pale Fire. Actually, it was idealized and stylized only in regard to the older woman, in regard to Queen Deeza, as she was that afternoon on that blue terrace. It represented a plain retouched likeness. I trust the reader appreciates the strangeness of this, because if he does not, there is no sense in writing poems or notes to poems or anything at all. Here we have a hammering of that nail. Kinbote is saying only someone who had seen Queen Deeza in that terrace in profile could have written those lines